plasmolysis. So plasmolysis is basically a disease that the trees can get where it cannot retain water. So if a tree cannot retain water, eventually it will die. What Barrett Rock tried to show to the Soviets was that trees have needles on. So when a healthy tree will have needles on it that are over 12 years old. So basically it means a healthy tree, it will keep what it grows 12 years before will still be attached to the tree. What he was finding in these forests, that these needles were no older than 12 months old and they were dying still. So basically he showed the devastating effect it was having on the forest. You know, animals' natural habitat was being destroyed. It was either being cut down to expand the industrialization, or it was cut down because it was already dead, and they would burn the wood to create more pollutants, just for more energy. So basically the big change for the industrialization of this town and the Black Triangle was in November 1989. Basically what happened here was that just saw the fall of communism, and the Czech Republic was created. So a democracy was created in that area and it was known as the Czech Republic. So now that had kind of jurisdiction of what happened in the Black Triangle and what happened with these industrialized towns. So what the first thing that was done was to bring in legislation to bring down the pollution, because everybody knew it was going on, but they didn't have the power to do so. Now they did, and straight away it was one of the first policies that they did was to bring down the pollution and to stop the industrialization of this particular area, because they saw what was happening to this forest. They saw that what was going on was wrong. They saw that what they were putting into the air was devastating to the environment. This was helped by the EU. So in 1990, the European Union, otherwise known as the EU, gave the Czech Republic up to 1.1 billion euros, which works out to be about $1.5 billion US dollars, plus $626 million they received from the World Bank. This funding was put into basically dismantling the power plant. The power plant that was there that was creating all this pollution. They spent that on taking it down, reversing it, putting it into alternative sources. So alternative sources are always going to be the way forward. They saw that. So alternative energy sources that were introduced were things like natural gas, hydropower, so they were using dams and they were using natural water sources to create energy. And also they built a new nuclear power plant, cleaner energy than what they had previously, and it was more controlled. So the energy, those three energy sources were much cleaner and much better for the environment. It also brought people into jobs, and it was the ethics of the whole process was much better. Basically what they tried to do was try and mirror the pollution standards of the EPA. The EPA, the governing body that controls stuff like this, and they tried to mirror the EPA standards so that they could basically show that what they were doing was ethical, it was morally right, and it wasn't doing too much damage to the environment. The surrounding countries that I talked about before in the Black Triangle were Germany, Hungary and Poland. Those three countries also followed suit with the Czech Republic. They realised that this was much more beneficial for everybody long term, financially, environmentally. Everything was much more beneficial for them to take this approach. The European Union also helped those countries. Mining of the poisonous lignite that we talked about earlier, that was dropped. Basically they dropped that year on year, every single year. So in 1984, 80 million tonnes of lignite was mined, but that moved to 56 million in 1993, and then now in 1999 it was 50 million tonnes. So within 15 years there's been a reduction of 30 million tonnes of lignite. So even though it is still mined and is still burnt off, it is a reduction. So these reductions are all small steps in progress for the Czech Republic. They saw basically improvement they saw the improvement in pollution, but they're also seeing the improvement in the health of the people that were living there. So the life expectancy was now rising as quickly as it declined during the pollution. As the pollution is disappearing, they're seeing a rise in life expectancy, and it's due to peter off into the same numbers as the rest of Europe. Deaths from respiratory diseases are also down, which is a huge thing, because that was caused great stress on their health systems because of the amount of respiratory diseases that were being contracted in this industrialised town. However, we'll talk about cultural and social damage. The cultural and social damage of this pollution, even though the pollution is on the decline in the Black Triangle, there were some knock-on effects culturally and socially. Basically, there is still a lack of education present in the area because so many people moved out. The people that, there's not been an influx of people moving back into the area, so the education is still low. There's an unemployment rate of 20%, because obviously if they're closing down a power plant and they're opening up new advanced technologies, those people might not be qualified to then switch straight over. So those people in the first power plant are out of a job and they can't find anything else because the education rates were so low in the first place. So when there's unemployment and there's lack of education, there's other things that come along with it, such as a poor diet, smoking, and then leads to drug addiction. These are all big problems in the area still now today. The cleaner fuel that they are using is much more expensive. The reason they used the lignite in the first place is because it was readily available and much cheaper than coal, natural gas and things like that. The natural gas they're using right now, that has to be imported from Russia, that is at a cost. The hard coal is more expensive than the lignite, like I said before, and because it's so expensive, the population is now turning to burning wood, and burning wood is also pretty bad for the environment. It causes more pollutants than burning coal. So the things when you burn wood, the things that go into the atmosphere is much worse than if you were burning coal. The forests, I mean, they're not yet ecologically sound. They are improving, but they because of the detriment that it was in previously, it's still not at a standard where that would be acceptable. It's still trying to recover if it can recover. Basically, what's helped it improve is a process called liming. It's basically where it's like a crop duster, where they would dust the whole forest with lime. Lime basically reverses the reactions of all the pollutants that were absorbed by the trees and by the soil. This is taking effect, but it is a slow process and it's a very expensive process. So the powers that be with all the money, they're pumping a lot of money into the recovery of the forest. They're pumping a lot of money into cleaner fuels, but the cultural and social damage that it's causing, where they're not pumping money into education, not pumping money into getting a fitter and healthier people. It's kind of yin and yang. It's one person is improving but the other isn't. At the moment financially they cannot do both. Basically the argument being that the money needs to be invested in socially. So that was basically the story of the Black Forest. The Black Forest, it's gone through some changes, but it's on the mend, but it's not still without its problems. I'd also, to go along with carry on with the subject of pollution, bring it closer to home to the United States. We'll talk about California and how they're actually the first state to rule actually cutting down on car pollution. They're the first state to do it. They've gone against government rules and government legislation. They've made stricter rules on how much emissions a car can produce. Basically, California recognised that the US is part of the problem of global warming through car emissions. So they've now moved to put a 30% reduction in tailpipe emissions by 2016. It's had a big influence on the rest of the country because 7 other states have followed suit, including New York and New Jersey. And if trends follow, it could triple the amount of cars required to cut global warming emissions. So when you're talking about 3 huge states as New York, New Jersey, California, plus 4 others, if it's going to triple and get nearly 25 states involved in cutting emissions, then that is going to cut a huge dent in the amount of pollution that is in the air. So California are doing a good thing, and they recognise that tailpipe emissions in cars need to be cut down, and so other sources in travel, public transport and electrical cars are all being used in these states. There were, I found a lot of moments that basically changed the world in terms of pollution. The first one being the car. So when Carl Friedrich Benz, owner of now Mercedes-Benz, he was the first person to make a gasoline automobile and basically infatuate the globe with speed, and basically started off the fossil fuel age, so people getting around in cars and things like that. The second is known as the Gusher. So basically it's where oil was found. British Petroleum and Arab American Oil, they dominate the ownership of oil, and look how much of a global thing, look how much that controls now. Other things such as the TV and things like that, that basically are social aspects that have changed the world and basically contributed to pollution being pumped into the world. There are also some things that I found that either are happening or going to happen that are going to reverse these changes, try and reduce the pollution. Those are things that create the pollution. Things that are trying to reduce the pollution are things such as the Earth Summit. The protection of the biosphere is now an official agenda on the UN's policy and law, so that's something that is being taken very seriously. Other things such as the climate wake-up call, that is said to be still ongoing. Basically, it's the concept that some big natural disaster will hit us, and maybe it'll take that spark for us to realise that what we're doing to the Earth is our own doing. It's the pollution that's doing it. It's causing global warming. So, to briefly discuss what global warming is, it's basically the warming up of the planet. The reason it's warming up is because we're putting so many pollutions into the world. So when the sun's light comes down onto the Earth as light waves, rebounds off the Earth as infrared waves, it cannot get back out because it's changed the way it's approached, and it cannot get back out because the pollution bounces it back in. So the way it bounces it all back inside the Earth, the way it bounces way back, it's basically an accumulation effect of warming the Earth. The effects of this is basically the melting of the ice caps. This brings sea levels higher, changes sea currents, and essentially brings climate change to the whole world. Every nation on the planet will be affected by climate change because of these melting of the ice caps. Global consequences of melting of the ice caps would be land masses to be seriously reduced. Nations such as the Netherlands will probably cease to exist because it's at a very low, it's below sea level. Nations like Japan will have limited land access. If the Gulf Stream stops, ice ages can be kicked back in early. It can lead to extinction of species and just disastrous changes in human behaviour. You never know that will climate change basically make people unruly? Will people not will they just act in an unruly manner because they feel like the world is out of control, sort of thing? So pollution is a very, very serious topic. I feel like the chapter that I covered really hit hard, and just like it was only approached on a small scale. It approached the forest in the Black Triangle, but it showed you just how much of an effect it had on the collapse of communism, the way the EU are now pumping billions and billions of euros into ratifying it. So basically pollution is something that is an ongoing thing that's affecting us all, that we all contribute to, and something that we can all fix. So that's my presentation done, so thank you for listening.